dusting of snow. Spice, dragon, honey, a little overview. Poet of his time in the snow. This ribbon here. Dramatic monologues before I sleep. Good evening and welcome to Softwoods ASMR. Before I get into tonight's soft study of Robert Frost, I thought I would just talk for a couple of minutes about what's happening here and also what's happening in my part of the world where I live. So I am filming this on the official start of winter, the first day of winter. So I thought that a tutorial focused on Robert Frost's winter poems would be quite in theme. We will look at a few other poems too, but the focus will be on his life and his winter poems and his style. So, some other things about this setup. I had intended on wearing a nice holiday blouse, but it is so cold, and so I opted for one of my favorite cozy sweaters here, and I've worn this one before. And the blouse I had chosen, I'll save for another time. It's so beautiful. It has shimmery black sleeves. It's very beautiful. And so I had also done my nails to go with the shimmer of that blouse. But I think it works well with this sweater too. And my nails are quite short because I do a lot of cooking. So with my hands constantly in water and chopping, they can take a beating. So I do try to get them a little longer, but this is pretty much the length of my nails currently. So they still make pretty good tapping sounds, I think. And I did have to put on quite a bit of coconut cream because it's so cold here that the hands can get chapped quite easily. So I have a little bit starting, but I think I might have nipped it in the bud with the cream. So, as I was saying, it is the start of winter here, which means we have quite cold temperatures. I'd love to know what your weather is like where you are. We do have a light dusting of snow, we usually have quite a lot of snow by this point, and from what I see in the forecast, we're supposed to get some snow in about a week. So that's unusual for us, but at least there's a dusting out there. I do like snow, so I'm looking forward to it because with the days so short and the nights so long, the snow really lights up the world at this time. So, I also wanted to tell you that I think I'm fully over a cold. It was just a little head cold. But I have this here in case I need it. For my voice quality, I want it to stay nice and clear. And it can be a little sensitive after a cold, so I've got my Halls candy here. If I need it, I probably won't. And I also have this tea here. It is one of my very favorites. I'll show you. It's Spice Dragon Red Chai. And it's got cinnamon, rooibos, ginger root, and clove. So I'm having my favorite tea, so that will definitely help my voice as well. And in here, I did put a little honey, just a little tiny bit. So I'm just stirring it now so that it's nicely mixed in. And another tea I've been having a lot lately is this one by Stash. It's called Christmas Eve tea. It's a herbal tea, which is nice because I've mentioned before that I like to drink caffeinated beverages until about noon every day, and then I switch over to herbal teas. So this one is really different actually. It's not what you'd expect in terms of the combination of flavors. It's got cinnamon and spearmint. Have you ever had that combination? I never have. With orange peel, vanilla extract, orange oil, cinnamon oil, and other natural flavors, along with clove bud oil. So it is quite a festive tea if you consider those tastes to be festive. And it is also like, if I looked at those ingredients, I might think I might not like this, but it's very, very nice, surprisingly. So I recommend this as an interesting tea to try out. In tonight's tutorial, we are going to do a soft study of Robert Frost. And we'll start by doing a little overview of his life as a poet. And then we'll get into looking at some of his poems, which are in the public domain if you want to look them up. And I'll recommend some books as well, including this one, and I've got a few back here as well. So, we'll then talk about his literary style, and I'll write down some key points as we go along. I'm just going to move a few things around here so that we have lots of room. Okay, so I have started some notes here, and we'll continue. So Robert Frost was born on March 26, 1874, and lived to the age of 88. Although he was born in San Francisco, California, the family moved and he actually grew up in New England, specifically Lawrence, Massachusetts. This location and this region would later become the setting for so many of his poems. So there he is, young. Just put this photo of him right here. He was known as a poet early on in high school. And 2 years after he graduated from high school, he had his very first poem accepted in the New York Independent. So at that time, he was paid $15. He's paid $15 for that publication. And the title of his first accepted poem is My Butterfly, which I do have in one of these books here. I'll show you what it looks like. I think it's on page 33. Yeah. So there's the poem that was his very first published poem, and it appeared in, as I said, the New York Independent. Like many writers and poets, Robert Frost endured many rejections from publishers at first, for years. And he made his living as a farmer and a teacher. And then he moved with his family to England. And although he became most famous poet of his time. It wasn't until he was 40 years old in England that he published his first book of poems, and that was in 1913. So, in 1913, his first collection of poems was titled A Boy's Will. And I'm going to just show you this book again because it has structured the collection with his first 4 poetry collections. So I just mentioned his first collection was A Boy's Will, and then it goes on to his next 3 collections. So I'll just tell you what those are before we take a look. So the first publication in England was A Boy's Will, and then it was about a year later, it was 1914, that his next collection came out, and that was North of Boston. And interesting that he's in England at the time writing about New England of America. North of Boston. He then moved back to the United States, and in 1915 the publisher Holt published an American edition of North of Boston. And this really established his reputation and his career as a poet. Holt also published his 3rd collection, A Mountain Interval, in 1916. A Mountain Interval. And then in 1923, his 4th collection of poetry was published, and it was called New Hampshire. And this one, New Hampshire, won him his first Pulitzer Prize, and he would go on to win 4 Pulitzer Prizes in his lifetime. So here are the first 4 collections. He did go on to publish many other works in his lifetime, but this book here is focused on that first 4, those first 4 books, as I mentioned. So, A Boy's Will, all those poems. We've got North of Boston here. It's his 2nd collection. And you've got Mountain Interval here. And New Hampshire. And the 4th collection, New Hampshire, contains the very famous poem Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. Somewhere here. Right here. Stopping by woods on a snowy evening. So what I'd like to do is show you a few poems that are focused on winter or snow. If it's a longer poem, I will read excerpts. And if it's a very short poem, I will read the full poem. And then we'll come back to talking about his style. So I'm going to move this back for a minute, and we're going to actually look at this too. So here's a simply gorgeous book. It is a picture book, Stopping by Woods on a Snowy Evening. It's the poem in its entirety, and it's illustrated by Susan Jeffers. It's quite beautiful. You see the tree here and the snow on a dark night. And I want to respect the artist's copyrights here, but I will show you just a few spreads, and I will also read from the poem a little bit from this book. So what I'll do is find the poem here. I think I said it's 256. Okay, so I've got the poem ready here. Just mark it with this ribbon here. And I'll just open up to a spread in here. So we'll start with this village scene. Isn't that beautiful? The houses and the rooftops are covered in snow. And let's see the beginning of this poem. I'll just paraphrase a little bit to give us a setting that the narrator, you can see him right there with his horse, and it could be Robert Frost himself. So he's headed into the woods, and he has left the village, and I'll just read the first stanza here. Whose woods these are, I think I know. His house is in the village, though. He will not see me stopping here to watch his woods fill up with snow. So this is referring to his house is in the village, the person who owns the woods. So I'll find another spread here. So they stop in the woods, and I'm going to find a beautiful spread here. How about this one? I think we'll go with gorgeous. Okay. So, just hopping down to the third stanza now. He gives his harness bells a shake to ask if there is some mistake. The only sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. What a beautiful, gorgeous description of sound. The only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. And that's what this spread here is illustrating. From these words, the only other sounds the sweep of easy wind and downy flake. You can see all these gorgeous snowflakes. They say that every snowflake is unique, and these illustrations really show how unique each snowflake is. Just look at this. So to continue with the poem, from those sounds, I'm going to read the last stanza now of the poem, which is absolutely famous and so gorgeous and so fitting for ASMR. The woods are lovely, dark, and deep, but I have promises to keep, and miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. That line is repeated. You can see here. And miles to go before I sleep. And miles to go before I sleep. And just look at the blizzard of snow. I can imagine the sound that he was describing of snow, if there can be such a thing. It's pretty silent, but if snow sweeps against your coat or your glasses or your mittens, a slippery material, you will hear them. You'll hear the snowflakes. Or you could hear the snowflakes hitting leaves that have not fallen, such as the oak leaf that tends to cling on, brown and shriveled, on the oak tree. So there's simply gorgeous, famous poem. Now let's take a look at another poem about snow. And it's on page 252 of this book. Here we go. So, this one is called Dust of Snow. The way a crow shook down on me. The dust of snow from a hemlock tree has given my heart a change of mood and saved some part of a day I had rued. He's really captured a moment here with the emphasis on the change of mood that occurs after the crow shook some snow down on him from the hemlock tree. Talks about chance and being in the moment and connecting with nature. And the next poem in here that has a winter theme to it is called Stars. Here it is. Stars, how countlessly they congregate o'er our tumultuous snow, which flows in shapes as tall as trees when wintry winds do blow. As if with keenness for our fate, our faltering few steps on to white rest and a place of rest invisible at dawn. And yet, with neither love nor hate, those stars, like some snow-white Minerva's snow-white marble eyes, without the gift of sight. That's a really interesting third stanza. Some repetition of words in there, snow-white twice, and the image of the marble eyes without the gift of sight is quite stunning. So that is the third poem from this book with a winter setting. I'll look now at this. This is just a collection of poems for children, and it's a bunch of different poems by different authors, but I did remember that there was a Robert Frost poem in here, and I think it's, there's Wallace Stevens, A Snowstorm. I think it might be near the back. Yeah, here it is. It's called A Patch of Old Snow. There's a patch of old snow in a corner that I should have guessed was a blow-away paper the rain had brought to rust. It is speckled with grime as if small print overspread it, the news of the day I've forgotten. Really love the simplicity of this one. Look at that. It's a little cat and a child looking out in the window, looking out of the window at the snow coming down in the night. And here we have a house, the light on, and the moon rising. So let's look at his style. And I'll write down some more here. When I talk about his style, you might be a little familiar with it now that I've read a few of his poems, to either refresh your memory if you've read Robert Frost before, or perhaps that's the first time you've really heard a poem by Robert Frost. So for style, there's a realism to his work. He explores New England regional and rural themes. So write that down, realism and regional themes. And the poems are very often focused on nature. He employs a blend of traditional meter with colloquialism. What I mean by traditional meter is the rhythm or beats per line, as opposed to an unmetered free verse. He also makes use of some rhyme. So, traditional meter mixed with colloquialism. And there's a directness to his words. His work is generally not experimental, but very accessible. His poems often have a tragic view, revealing human loneliness and the indifference of the universe, but also finding or searching for meaning. Searching for meaning in his words. Intangible things. Through observations in nature. And there's a sense of a merging of the realms of thought and the physical world he describes. There's a use of dramatic monologues, and dialogues, which I'll show you now, and show the regional way of speaking often. So I believe that some examples of dialogue in his poems are around page somewhere in the 40s. Yeah, so you can see the quotation marks quite a bit here. There's conversations, there's dialogue, there's monologue. Yeah, continues quite a bit. Let's see, more dialogue. And you get a sense of character and a regional way of speaking in those passages. those stanzas. In some poems, he explored the short meditation. Short meditation. Let me think of an example of a short meditation focused on an object, a place, a person, or an event. I think there are quite a few, but I'm going to go with The Road Not Taken, which is in this book for sure. Look at the contents page here. And here it is, page 121. So it's in Mountain Interval, that collection, which is his third collection. Here it is. I'll read this one. This famous poem that you might have heard before. And if you haven't, well, this is just really a signature poem. And as I said earlier, it is an example of a short meditation focused on an event. The road not taken. Two roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both. And be one traveler, long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Then took the other as just as fair, and having perhaps the better claim, because it was grassy and wanted wear, though as for the passing there, had worn them really about the same. And both that morning equally lay in leaves no step had trodden black. Oh, I kept the first for another day. Yet, knowing how way leads on to way, I doubted if I could ever come back. I shall be telling this with a sigh, somewhere ages and ages hence. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. I'm going to read those last three lines again because they're just so profound. Two roads diverged in a wood, and I took the one less traveled by, and that has made all the difference. So again, that was an example of a short meditation about a place, about an event. In later works, his poems became more self-conscious. Themes of resistance and self-realization. Okay, and later still, his works became quite abstract toward the end of his life, and even a little cryptic. So we have this picture of him as a young man over here, and here he is a little older. A little older, more like quite a bit older. So you could put this here, or maybe here. see how he's aged. He's still wearing a tie in both of these pictures. He still has his hair parted this way. On his, would that be his right side? Yeah. Right side part. And I also have, it looks like it might be this picture, a 10-cent stamp. Robert Frost, American poet. So, how would you feel about being on a stamp? I'm really not sure if I would like that for myself personally, but there it is. It's nice that this poet could be a face on a stamp. So I do recommend these books. As I said earlier, you can look at a lot of his poems online with a simple Google search. A lot of his poems are published on reputable poetry sites such as the Poetry Foundation or poets.org. And you can also Google Robert Frost public domain. If you can get yourself to a library, or if you're interested in ordering these books from your bookstore, I'll just give you the information about this one. This is published by Canterbury Classics. And in 2019. So this one might be easy to find, to order, and you might see it in your library too. This one's quite popular. So again, it's Robert Frost stopping by woods on a snowy evening, and it's illustrated by Susan Jeffers. So I recommend these books if you are interested in reading more. I hope that you enjoyed this cozy winter study of Robert Frost as much as I enjoyed talking about him, reading his poems, and thinking about his style. Until next time, please take good care of yourself.